Ever heard a story that just completely, like, flips your understanding of something? Well, that's what we're doing today.
Okay.
We're exploring the really powerful story of Zuheer Al-Abase. You can hear it in his interview with Lloyd Shellenberger for the Military Historian podcast.
Okay.
And this is a story that takes us right into the middle of the Iraq War, specifically to a city called Samarra.
Right.
And Zuheer describes it as the lion's den.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Samarra was incredibly volatile at that time. I mean, a hotbed of insurgent activity and just a constant target for attacks. So when we hear Zuheer describe what it was like to grow up there, it gives you a sense of what daily life was like for the civilians there.
It's so much more than just like surviving, though, right? It's like his story is about incredible courage.
Yes.
As much as it is about just like the reality of war.
Absolutely. Take his father, Majid, for example.
Yeah.
This is a man who had already spent 5 years in Abu Ghraib prison.
Oh, my gosh.
For speaking out against Saddam Hussein's regime.
Yeah.
But even after that, he continued to help people in need.
Wow.
Regardless of which side of the conflict they were on.
I mean, that's just like unimaginable almost.
Yeah.
Right? To hold on to that compassion after experiencing something like Abu Ghraib.
It speaks to incredible strength of character.
Yeah.
But what's even more remarkable is this belief in helping others.
Yeah.
Led to this encounter that would change his family's fate.
You're talking about the meeting with the 2 American soldiers. Grant and Shane Wright.
Yeah.
This is where things get really interesting.
Think about it. I mean, for many Iraqis at the time, the U.S. military was a foreign occupying force.
Right.
There was suspicion, there was fear, hostility.
Of course.
But then Majid's wife falls ill.
Yeah.
And these 2 soldiers, Grant and Shane, they step up to help.
It's such a small gesture almost.
Yeah.
Right? But it has such a profound impact.
It really did. It challenged their whole perspective. They're in the middle of a war zone.
Right. And the enemy is showing compassion and kindness.
Yeah.
It shows you just how complex the human dynamics are.
Yeah.
Even in those environments.
And it gets even more complex.
It does.
Zuheer talks about what daily life in Samarra was like.
Yes.
He talks about the fear, the reliance on family for protection.
Right.
And that feeling of living on a knife's edge, you know?
It's hard to grasp that.
Yeah.
Living with that understanding that each day could be your last.
And tragically for Majid, that day did come.
It did.
January 16th, 2005.
Yes.
That's a turning point in their lives.
Yeah.
It's a day that they were forced to confront just the brutal cost of war.
It's Zuheer's description of waiting for his father to come home, only to see his bullet-riddled truck being towed back by American soldiers.
It's heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
It's like one of those moments where you have to pause and absorb what's being said.
Right.
It brings you face-to-face with the reality.
In reality of war and its impact
Yeah.
on individual lives.
And if that wasn't enough,
I know.
they then had to deal with the agonizing uncertainty of Zuheer's brother Omar, who was with Majid, and vanished without a trace.
It's almost too much to bear, that double blow.
Yeah, and it's at this point that Grant and Shane, those soldiers, reappear, this time as bearers of tragic news.
Strange twist of fate.
Yeah.
The people who extended a hand of friendship.
Right.
Now delivering the news of a devastating loss.
It's a reminder that war creates these strained relationships, right?
Yeah.
And their role in the story wasn't over.
No, it wasn't.
It was about to get even bigger.
It was.
Grant and Shane sensed the family was in danger.
They did.
What did they know? How did they anticipate this threat?
Well, Zuheer recounts how just days after his father's death, armed men came to their house.
Wow.
It was a targeted attack.
Oh, gosh.
It seemed like Majid's enemies were closing in.
Oh, but Grant and Shane were prepared.
Thank goodness.
They were.
Yeah.
The firefight that followed is chaotic and terrifying.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, gunshots, bullets hitting their home, people screaming.
Wow.
But the implication is clear.
Yeah.
The American soldiers fought back to protect the family.
It's a stark reminder of that constant threat of violence.
It is.
In Samarra.
Yeah.
Zuheer doesn't say what happened to the attackers.
Right.
But he thinks they didn't survive.
That's a somber note to add to the story.
grieving the loss of their father,
I know.
uncertain about Omar.
Right.
And now their home is under siege.
Yeah.
How much more could one family endure?
Right. And then Omar had been kidnapped.
Oh, my God.
And not by insurgents.
Wow.
By their own uncles.
Oh, my goodness, that is.
Yeah, it's a shocking revelation.
It really is.
It throws a whole other layer of complexity into this.
Absolutely.
It highlights the deep divisions that existed in Iraqi society at the time.
Yeah.
Danger could lurk even within your own family.
Wow.
And Zuheer's mother's response is incredible.
Yeah.
She refused to leave until Omar was returned.
That's incredible.
Strength of will.
Yeah.
In the face of unimaginable pressure.
She was determined to keep her family together.
She was.
Yeah.
And thankfully it worked.
Yeah.
The uncles released Omar.
Yeah.
But they left the rest of the family behind.
Wow.
And the U.S. Army stepped in with this daring plan to get them to safety.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
I know. He describes this high security operation, this rushed convoy through areas of the Green Zone that were off limits even to soldiers.
And the Green Zone itself holds a lot of significance.
It does.
This heavily fortified area in Baghdad.
Right.
This symbol of relative safety in the middle of war-torn Iraq.
Imagine going from the fear of Samara to that security.
Yeah.
It must have felt like a whole other world.
It must have.
But even there, the trauma of their experience would stay with them.
Of course. Yeah.
They had lost so much, and their journey wasn't over.
Right.
They were then flown across the world to America.
A whole world away.
I know.
From the horrors they left behind.
What do you think it must have been like for them?
I can't even imagine.
Landing in New York City after all that.
Yeah.
Zuheer says it was like stepping into a movie.
Wow. That contrast is staggering.
It is. Yeah. And we'll explore that contrast more next time.
Okay.
As we look at Zuheer's experience adapting to life in America.
Sounds good.
Like stepping out of a time machine. Almost.
Right.
1 minute they're in war-torn Iraq.
Yeah.
The next they're in Times Square in a limo.
What was going through their minds, I wonder? Taking in all those sights.
Right.
After everything they went through.
Yeah. And the journey didn't end there.
Right.
They were then flown on a private jet to North Dakota.
Oh,
that was their new home.
That's incredible. Talk about going from one extreme to the other.
It's it really makes you think about the spectrum of human experience.
It does.
The highs and lows.
Yeah.
And for Zuheer, all in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, and it highlights how much effort went into keeping them safe.
It does.
And giving them a new start.
Yeah, but even with all that support, starting over in a new country doesn't erase the past.
Right.
Does it?
It doesn't. And Zuheer admits he's still afraid.
Oh, wow.
To return to Iraq.
Understandably so.
Yeah, after all these years. And you can understand why.
Yeah.
The trauma, the loss of his father, the constant threat of violence.
Yeah.
Those memories don't just disappear.
No, they don't.
It really shows you the impact of war.
It does.
How it can shape you even years later.
How do you cope with that trauma?
Yeah.
How do you move forward?
And it's interesting how Zuheer talks about his mother.
Yeah.
And how she's trying to help her children overcome that fear, encouraging them to face it.
Yeah.
Rather than letting it control them.
It's a powerful statement about resilience.
Yeah.
Even in the face of loss and fear.
Right.
There's still that drive to not let the past control you.
It's like she's saying,
yeah,
we can't choose what happens to us.
Right.
But we can choose how we respond.
Exactly. And that spirit, that refusal to be defined by their circumstances, it runs through this whole family.
It does. You see it in Majid.
Yeah.
And how he was committed to helping others.
Right.
You see it in Zuheer's mother.
Yes.
And how she fought to keep her family together.
And in Zuheer himself.
Right.
Building this new life.
Right. And it makes you realize, even amidst all the chaos and brutality, the human spirit can still flourish.
It can.
And it brings us back to Grant and Shane.
It does.
Their actions are remarkable.
They are.
It started with that simple act of kindness.
Right.
Helping Majid's wife when she was sick.
But it became so much more.
It did.
They risked their lives for this family.
It's incredible.
It is.
It really challenges how we think about soldiers in a war zone.
It does. It shows that compassion can exist anywhere.
Yeah.
Even in conflict.
And it speaks to just how complex war really is.
Yeah.
It's not black and white.
Right.
There aren't clear-cut heroes or villains.
Individual choices.
Right. And actions. And at the end of the interview, Zuheer says, life or death. It's that simple.
Such a powerful statement.
It is. It cuts through all the rhetoric, all the arguments.
It gets right to the heart of it.
Yeah.
War is about survival.
Yeah.
The possibility of losing everything.
It forces us to confront that human cost.
It does.
The shattered lives, the families torn apart.
We can't just talk about war abstractly.
Right.
We have to acknowledge the personal tool.
And Zuheer's story gives us a glimpse into that tool.
It does.
A reminder that war isn't just about battles and strategies.
It's about the human stories.
Yeah.
The stories like Zuheer's.
One thing that really struck me was when Zuheer talked about his mother.
Okay.
And how resourceful she was.
Yeah.
He jokes about how she was the best cook in the world.
Right.
Because she could make a month's worth of food out of potatoes.
Wow.
I know it's a small detail.
Yeah.
But it says so much about her resilience, her ability to adapt, even in the face of hardship.
It's a recurring theme in their story.
It is. And even in the darkest of times.
Yeah.
There's that spark of humor.
Yeah.
That determination to find joy.
Right.
Even in the struggle.
And that resilience connects everyone in the story.
Yeah, it does. You see it in Majid. You see it in Zuheer's mother.
Yeah.
You see it in Zuheer.
Yeah.
So what can we take away from Zuheer's story?
For me, it's a call for empathy.
Yeah.
It reminds us that behind every headline about war, there are real people.
Right.
With real stories.
Yeah. And by listening to those stories, we can maybe start to build a more peaceful world.
Exactly.
It also makes us think about our own assumptions about war.
It's not black and white.
Right.
It's complex.
It had a lasting impact.
And Zuheer's story deserves to be heard.
It does.
What struck you most about his experience?
Yeah. What struck you?
Was it the courage, the kindness of the soldiers?
Yeah.
The resilience?
Yeah. I think his interview leaves us with a lot to think about.
It does.
How can we learn from stories like his?
Yeah.
To promote peace? How can we honor the sacrifices?
Yes.
How can we work towards a future without violence?
Right.
These are questions worth thinking about.
They are.
Zuheer's story is incredible.
It really is.
It shows us the impact of Saddam Hussein's regime.
Right.
The U.S. intervention. And how this family was caught right in the middle of it all.
Yeah.
But it's those moments of human connection that I keep coming back to.
Those are powerful.
Yeah, those moments where you see compassion.
Yeah.
Across cultural and political divides.
Right.
It shows that war is never simple. It's not just an equation or a battle plan.
Right.
It's about individual stories.
It's about people.
And those stories, like Zuheer's,
Yeah.
are so powerful.
They are.
They help us understand the effects of war.
It's more than just what we see in the headlines.
Yeah.
It's about families and communities.
Yeah, and future generations.
Exactly.
You know, one thing that I thought was interesting
Yeah.
was when Zuheer talked about his mother
Okay.
and how resourceful she was.
Oh, yeah.
He said she could make a month's worth of meals
Wow.
out of just potatoes.
That's incredible.
Right.
Yeah.
It just shows you how resilient she was,
It does.
how adaptable. You know, she had to find a way
Yeah.
to provide for her children,
Right.
to make the best out of a bad situation.
And that's a theme throughout their story.
It is.
Yeah.
And even in the darkest times,
Yeah.
they still found moments of humor and joy.
Right. You see that strength in everyone.
You do. In Majid.
Yeah.
In Zuheer's mother.
In Zuheer.
After hearing Zuheer's story, what stays with us?
For me, it's a reminder to be empathetic.
Yeah.
To try to understand.
To remember that there are real people behind the headlines.
Exactly.
That war has a human cost.
It does.
And if we listen to these stories,
Yeah.
maybe we can make the world a little bit better.
A little more peaceful.
Zuheer's story also challenges how we think about war.
Right.
It's not black and white.
No easy answers.
It's complicated, and it has a lasting impact.
What part of his story resonated most with you?
Yeah, what did you find most impactful?
The courage, the kindness, the resilience.
I think his interview leaves us with a lot to think about.
The time.
How can we learn from stories like his?
Yeah, how can we make a difference?
How can we work for a future without violence?
That's the goal, right?
It is. And I hope this deep dive has given everyone something to think about.
Welcome to the Military Historian Podcast. I'm Lloyd Shellenberger. I'm your host. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome. My name is Lloyd Shellenberger from the Military Historian channel, and I'm here with some very special guests, and we're covering Left Behind Letters from Baghdad, the book that's going to come out here very shortly. And the family of the subject matter in the book is actually here. And today, I'm here with Zuheer Al-Abase. And say hello.
Hi, I'm Zuheer Al-Abase.
Well, we've been interviewing your families all day long, and actually probably till what, 7 o'clock tonight. And what people aren't aware of in this whole book series, and they shouldn't be until we tell them, is this is about your father who helped save a lot of American lives, and he helped the Americans in Iraq. Is that correct? Tell me about your father.
My father was a great man. He didn't want to just help the Americans in Iraq. He wanted to help the innocent people in Iraq as well. And obviously with the war in Iraq, there was innocent people being killed that had no right to lose their life. So he wanted to help both sides, and all lives mattered to him. It wasn't just that the American lives mattered to him. It was all lives mattered to him. So he worked tirelessly and endlessly, making sure that everybody was having an equal opportunity that was innocent in the war that took place in Iraq to be able to have a better life.
He disagreed with the Saddam regime, and his name is Majid Al-Abase. He disagreed with the Saddam regime and the murderous tendencies they seem to have. And ISS, he didn't. In fact, he was a target of the IS. The Iraqi secret police knew him well, and that's because he never backed down, did he?
No, I think that speaks for his character as a person. When I say that he cared for all lives, that meant putting his life before others. And he was a very outspoken man. And so making sure that what Saddam's regime was doing, people knew that what he was doing is out there, and not shying away and being scared of the repercussion he would face from that regime.
He spent 5 years in Abu Ghraib as a result of that, correct?
Yeah.
Do you remember any of that?
I remember visiting him a couple times, I do, with my brother and my mother. So, yeah, not a place that a kid should go visit,
no.
If I'm being honest. I don't think a kid should ever go visit their father in a type of place like that. But he is your father at the end of the day, so you are happy to see him. Under those circumstances, you wish that you can do something to be able to get him out. But, yeah.
Once he got out of Abu Ghraib, he met Rant and Shane Becker, soldiers from the 141st, in March of 2004, correct?
Correct.
At that particular point, there developed a friendship between each other. And tell us what happened beyond that.
Yeah, I think the friendship grew when, I'll start in the back and say that at the time between the Iraqi people and the U.S. people, you think that the U.S. military is foreign, right? Because they just came from another country, they're in war, and so we didn't know what to think of the American people. But Grant and Shane had helped my mother, who was sick, and that character spoke for everything for everyone in our household, to understand that these people never meant any harm, but that they were there to help us. So that friendship grew from the care that the U.S. soldiers showed my mother when she was really sick and wasn't able to get medication.
What was she sick from, if you don't mind me asking?
Just, I'm not even sure, to be honest with you.
But she just needed medication.
She did need medication. She did not only medication, she needed shots. She needed to be taken care of. My own father had to actually give her shots, so he couldn't take her to the doctor, being who he was. He was actually the one that had to give her shots and take care of her. And my dad's not a doctor, so you can imagine that
probably didn't go over well.
Didn't go so well, so she wasn't getting any better.
Right.
And she started to get a lot better when the U.S. Army was starting to take care of her.
Because Grant's actually a registered nurse.
Yeah.
So he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. So.
Now, you were living up in Samara at the time, correct?
Yep.
Tell me about growing up there really, if we must classify it as growing up right in the middle of the lion's den. You are right there. Everything that could be going wrong in the country is right in that area.
Yeah, Samara was the most dangerous place to enter for anybody. So as a kid, to be living there and now to be standing here talking to you is a miracle within itself, because many people don't get out from that place. That is the lion's den. So the fact that I am here is a miracle within itself. But yeah, we grew up in the desert in Samara. We got very close as siblings. You don't trust nobody except your own siblings and your mother and father. And so at the same time that I would never wish for anybody to experience any things that we experienced, I have to look back and say that I'm very grateful for some of the things that we did experience, to be in a place like that as siblings we had to protect each other, and that has grown into today's life. So
when your father was killed, January 16, 2005, where were you and what went through your mind on that particular day?
Yeah, I was on that particular day that my father passed. I was at I and my siblings were at our house in Samara. And my father is a very timely man. He learned how to be timely on making sure that he always showed up at the exact time. And our house at the time in Samara was about a mile away from the main road. And so as kids, you always knew what time your dad arrives. So as kids, you're always excited to be outside the house waiting for your father to come. And yeah, we waited. All right.
Need a minute. So you heard about it, when your mother heard about it, she was visibly shaken and frightened, knowing that possibly you kids may be next.
Yeah, as I recall from that night, we were all waiting, excited for my father to come back, and he's, like, as I said, he's a very timely man, and he didn't show up the time he was supposed to show up. And as a kid, you don't really know, but you live in that world.
Something isn't right.
Yeah, something is off, and you start to play all these ideas in your head. And my mother is a very powerful person, and she always made sure that she understood her kids to a point when she knew her kids were thinking of things that they shouldn't be thinking of. Mm-hmm. So she made sure that we were calming down, that nothing happened. But yeah, all I remember is my dad's truck being towed by the Humvees.
The Silverado?
The Chevy Silverado. And yeah, you get full of excitement, because not only do you get to see the soldiers that are helping you.
You think they're just towing the truck back. You don't realize it's worse than that.
Perfect. My dad's coming home. I'm so excited. The soldiers are coming with my dad. Like, it's perfect evening, right? Until the Chevy Silverado pulls up and it's full of bullets.
Your brother, Omar, was with them. And from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Iraqi soldiers picked him up. And they even have thought that he had died with your father. Is that true?
We thought that he died with my father, or he was kidnapped.
Okay.
My mom passed out when she saw the Silverado full of bullets, so she passed out. It wasn't until she regained consciousness that she realized my brother was missing.
They thought at this point he might be dead too.
And at this point, she thought he was gone.
A reasonable assumption, because he was right there when his father was killed. And talking to Omar, the only reason they didn't kill him, and correct me if I'm wrong, was because he was covered in blood, correct? They thought he was dead already.
They thought he was dead.
What went through your head when you thought, not only did they get my father, they got my brother too?
As a kid, I was 10 years old at the time. You don't understand when somebody tells you that your father died. You're asking the question to these people that are trying to help you understand it is, okay, can we go visit him? That's what I was asking. Can I go visit him at the hospital? Can I go see him? And I couldn't process the idea of what dead meant. at the war, I processed it, but when it came to my dad,
you didn't want to process it.
I was like, no, I want to go see him at the hospital. I don't know what you guys are talking about. So I kept asking that question, like, hey, I want to go to the hospital. You guys have to let me go see him. And so, yeah, it wasn't until that same evening that I realized I was never going to see him again.
It's a tough spot to be in. Who was it? Was it Grant's unit that brought the truck there?
Yeah.
So was it Grant and them that showed up with the truck?
It was Grant and Shane, and I remember when Shane pulled up and opened the door, my mom just
passed out.
Yeah, she knew that not only did my dad pass away and that they were coming for us, but that it didn't matter because Shane opened the door first and they came first before the other people.
Right, and did your mom at that particular point, she didn't speak English, so she kept repeating Baghdad, Baghdad, Baghdad when she woke up, right?
Yep. Yeah. She
and
that.
that's when they put Ollie on the line, and Ollie, am I correct, translated for her, and told the Grant and everybody, she's worried about her children because they now know they're coming after her.
And she was saying Baghdad because that's
the only word she knew.
That's the only word she knew, and that's the safest spot we could be at the time.
So she was really saying, get me to South Baghdad and let me stay with my family, right? And that's where she wanted to go and get the heck out of the house.
Yeah.
And it turns out she was right because what, a day later, 2 days later, they came back and shut the house up?
It was
after your father's death?
Yeah, they came and we actually did not leave the house the same night because we were waiting and hoping that Omar would show up.
Sorry to hear that.
And as we were waiting, that's when the cars pulled up. Luckily, the U.S. Army was there.
Going to happen. They were there, weren't they?
They were there before they showed up.
So there was an ambush almost on the part of the U.S. Army with these guys. And did the U.S. Army eliminate these guys, or did they get away?
You know, I will tell you this much. They confined us in the house right away. And all you hear as a kid is gunshots. Your house is getting hits with bullets. People are screaming. All I knew is the people that came in the house were not the people that came for us.
So essentially, and it was Grant and all those people, right?
Correct.
So they must have figured, and they correct me if I'm wrong at any point, they must have figured that an ambush on the family was imminent that night or the night after that. They waited and set themselves up so when these guys showed up, they had them.
Yeah.
And it's a good bet that none of them probably walked out.
I will bet my whole life on it that none of those guys walked out of that battle.
Good for that. I'm glad to hear that. So you knew that you couldn't stay there, though, after that specifically, because this probably wasn't going to be the last time they were going to do that. After that ambush, you knew you had to leave. What plan went into motion to make that happen? Because Omar was kidnapped by the uncle, what, a day later?
Mm-hmm. There was no plan to leave. The plan, once we found out Omar was still alive, the plan was we're not leaving until we get our brother.
Wow.
And my mother was not leaving that house no matter what it meant until he came.
And all they got was Omar. They didn't get the rest of you kids, right?
Nope. Just
was she furious about this at the time?
I mean, from my uncles, of course.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know.
You don't know. You never see it coming. You don't think it's going to be that.
Not from your uncles.
No. And then she went into South Baghdad and stayed there with her family. And what was that lockdown like for you guys? Because you guys couldn't go anywhere, correct?
Yeah. For me personally, I was happy in many moments because I was in a place where I felt more safe and I was able to be with my uncles.
Okay.
And my uncles on my mom's side.
In March 5th, you were brought into the Green Zone and you went to the train station. What do you remember about the train station? Because that in of itself was one of the biggest military operations they did during that time. They went in full bore and made sure that nobody got anywhere near you guys. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, that's very correct, and that's underlining a lot of what happened with those guys did and how it was operated for us to even be getting into the green zone, and what they had to do to make it look like so that nobody can touch us.
Right, because you went back in the restricted area of the green zone, correct?
Correct.
That restricted area wasn't even it wasn't even on limits to allow the soldiers, correct?
Yeah. No. The green zone was the most secure spot in all of Iraq at the time.
Yeah, and I was stationed out of there, by the way.
Yeah.
So I remember when they brought you in, pretty much it was a straight shot from the train station into there. As we talked about earlier, I said that there was one of the first times I had ever saw a convoy rush through, and there was nobody stopping it. And I was in amazement that there had to have been something there that was VIP, because this was not the normal function.
Yeah, I as a kid you don't understand it. When you get older, you understand that what your father did for the people,
right?
That they did that in return.
Mm-hmm.
People can make promises, but actions always speak louder than words.
Yes, they do.
And those actions spoke all the words that they needed to ever speak. So with the train station, nobody ever knew. There was no words being spoken.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but she wanted to go to Syria at the time. And was it her brother Ali that said, don't do it? Because, frankly, Syria was pro-Saddam at the time. And he was good friends with the Syrian leader. That would have not gone over well because of the pro-Saddam forces that had left Iraq and went to Syria. So he's the one that made the call, am I correct, to the State Department, said we cannot let this happen?
Honestly, on this part of life, I do not know.
I don't know either. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Something went down that they all decided that she was not going to Syria. You got to America, you got to New York. What was your opinion of America the first time you ever got to New York?
You are in awe. You only see New York back home on TV. So you're in awe that you're in a place that you could only imagine seeing on TV. And when you see it on TV, you as a kid from a third world country, you have dreams. So the fact that I was in a limousine driving on the bridge through New York, looking at the Empire State Building and all that, you're just trying to take it all in of the fact that, am I dreaming or not?
So you got a tour of New York in a limousine before you got on a private jet, by the way, to go back to North Dakota. That's a pretty good itinerary, if you ask me.
I couldn't have ran a better one.
What did you think of North Dakota when you got there?
You know, I was very happy no matter where I went, as long as I left that place, knowing that the people that were after us couldn't reach us. And so I had to grow to learn to love Fargo, because I knew that that place is now my home.
Right. You could never go back to Iraq, you knew it.
Yeah.
Have you ever been back to Iraq since then?
I've not. I've had my siblings and mother go back.
Is there a reason why you won't go back?
It's a fear inside that my mother is a very powerful person that is trying to get us to break that fear, knowing that some people like that should not be able to have the power after already having the power to take our father away, to take the power away from us ever wanting to go back to where we belong and where we come from.
So basically what you're saying is your mother rejects fear and intimidation as weapons.
Yeah, my mother and father.
Oh, your father definitely.
Yeah.
He lived that life.
Yeah.
But your mother too, because she is over there right now, and obviously none of this is going to get out until none of this is going to be published until she gets back. Are you happy now, where you're at in your life?
I couldn't be more happy.
What is it you hope to see or do or be? Where do you want to be in the next 5 years for you personally?
A father.
Wow. Family, kids? And your father taught you family is the most important thing, right?
Oh, my mother and father, yeah. They received a lot of backlash for being together, Not only did they receive a lot of backlash, they fought for each other because they loved each other a lot. My mother took care of all her kids any way possible. I remember we lived on a month long of potatoes. I always make the joke that my mom is the best cook in the world because she's the only person I know that can make a recipe out of potatoes for a month long, and every single time you ate it was different than the last.
Better than the last.
Better than last every single time.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Amazing.
If you had to look at Americans and say to Americans who don't understand this and never had to go through this, the cost of war. What is the ultimate cost of war, and particularly for families like you, and what should they be wary of?
Life or death.
It's that simple.
You either live or you die.
And a lot of people didn't make it through, did they?
Nope.
Your father being one of them.
Yep.
And your father fought for everybody. I want to thank you for being here, and I want to say to you that I hope that you, April, Esra, all of you, including Omar and everybody, Noir, all of you, have successful lives and happy lives. That's important. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. This is Lloyd Shellenberger for the Military Historian. We have been speaking to Zuheer Al-Abase, and this has been the Left Behind Letters from Baghdad series, Part 3. That's it for the Military Historian podcast. I'm Lloyd Shellenberger, your host. Tune in for more podcasts on the BNN Academy. Thank you.